Thank you.
I think I knew about you and Ballfolk a long time ago. Emilyn is a co-founder of maybe you should say what Ballfolk is. You can describe it better than I can, but because I first heard of you through Ballfolk, why don't you tell the lovely folks what it is?
Sure. So Ballfolk Toronto is a not-for-profit organization in Toronto, which organizes social folk dancing, traditional folk dancing in a modern context. And a lot of the dances are from France and other parts of Western Europe. And basically, we get together, we play tunes, and we dance. And it's open for people to come and learn the music and learn the dances. And we also put on events with visiting bands. So sometimes groups will come in from Europe and they might teach a dance workshop specific to their region or a music workshop specific to their region. And then we just have a ball, literally a ball. And people dance and listen to music and play music. That's basically it.
I believe thank you. I believe there's information about Ballfolk in your program and a link to their website. I have to tell you, I'm not a good dancer, and over time I have managed to learn some dances. People are really good teachers at Ballfolk, so if you're ever curious to come out, it's the place is called Drom Taberna, which is at Queen Street West and what's the street? Augusta.
Yeah, and it's actually more of a social event than a lesson. So it's non-intimidating, non-threatening in that way. You can come and just watch and have a beer or something and eventually join in if you like. And it's very casual, so it's a fun time.
And so a few years ago, I heard about Ballfolk and I turned up one night, but I was frightened about the dancing, so I didn't go back for a long time. And then 2 summers ago, I went up to a fiddle camp called Algoma Trad. What's the island Algoma Trad is?
St. Joseph's Island.
St. Joseph's Island, so beautiful up there. And I met Emilyn again, and we had a long talk about tunes, and I started to discover all this amazing fiddle music from the south of France that she's particularly good at. She won't let me call her an expert. I think of her as an expert. I said I wasn't going to say that. Oh, I'm very bad, Katherine, bad. I got very excited myself about learning some tunes and knowing more about it. And then it occurred to me, the more I learned the tunes, that a lot of things seemed in common with the French music of the 16th century that the Toronto Consort does. Of course, I'm not saying that the tunes in the modern tradition or even the exact dance steps are right from the 16th century, because of course humans change things no matter, even if they're trying not to. But writing in different modes, not just the modern major and minor scales, that's a feature of all this wonderful music. And of course, as you may know, dance in Europe, the types of dancing that's still done in the south of France and all over France are in lines, in chains of people, not couple dancing, which really is a legacy of the 19th century. So there really is an ancient link there. I don't know if the steps are the same as they were 500 years ago. So then I started to think, ooh, we should put this together. And also, I think for those of us in historical performance, we have only written records from the past, so we never know all the cultural information really all around that music, but notation can never show us everything we want to know, and especially when it's something like dance music. If we don't know what the dances look like, how do we know how fast to play the music? How do we know what extra swing or verve to give it? And how do we know, just what people were doing? So I thought this would be a great way to bring these two worlds together, and all week we've been learning from each other, and we'll play an old tune, and then Emilyn or Leah will say, oh, we know a tune a lot like that. So it's been pretty amazing experience. But I thought it'd be great to get to know more about Emilyn and what she's doing and what she's got cooking. And I wonder, Emilyn, so you're from out in the West Coast, And did you start playing fiddle, or did you study violin as a child?
I actually studied piano, yeah. So I studied classical piano. I did all the RCM grades to grade 10, yep. In Smithers, a really small town very far north in British Columbia. It's about a 14-hour drive north of Vancouver. So it's pretty isolated there, but there's a lot of musicians who live there, and in particular, a thing that I learned a lot from was there's a sort of fiddle orchestra. So it's fiddle-based in that it's traditional music or modern music in a fiddle traditional style. And it's an orchestra in that there's just tons of violins and also other instruments. But violin is kind of the main, fiddle is the main focus of the group. And at the time when I was 12, it was called the Valley Youth Fiddlers. And I saw what happened was, yes, I was playing hockey at the time. And somebody on my hockey team said, "Oh, our fiddle group is playing a concert, and we're gonna have a dance afterwards. You should come." And I thought, "Oh, that sounds cool." And my dad was like, "Yeah, you should go. You should go." And so we went to this event, and I saw the Valley Youth Fiddlers play. And my dad pointed out that all of the fiddlers were youth, but all of the other instruments were definitely not youth. And including the piano player was not a youth piano player. So he thought, "Emilyn, you should join the Valley Youth Fiddlers as a piano player." And so I started to learn how to accompany fiddle music, which, if you haven't heard that before, basically it's kind of like the opposite of jazz. So the melody stays the same, but you improvise the harmony. Not that you don't improvise harmony in jazz sometimes, but usually the solo happens over top of a set harmony in jazz, right? So I started learning how to use these skills I had learned in classical music, like the technique of arpeggios and things like that, and then they became useful to me because I could use them as like building blocks for playing creatively. And the sort of breakthrough moment for me was my mom was sitting at home playing guitar, and she was reading sort of like a lead sheet, so lyrics with chords written above, no notes written out, just the chord symbols. And I asked her, how did she know what notes to play if there was just G written? Because she was playing all these notes on her guitar. And so she said, well, I don't really know, but she sort of counted up her frets and told me all the notes, and I placed them on the piano, and I said, oh, that's a G arpeggio that I practice every day. And so that was kind of like this breakthrough moment for me where I realized that all this technique was really useful, and I could, start accompanying other melodies or improvising and things like that. So,
but at this point, then, still, you'd never played fiddle at all? Wow. And so at what age did you how did that happen?
Well, all my friends played the fiddle, so I wanted to as well. And there was no music store in Smithers, but there was the catalog, kind of like the Sears catalog, except for the Shar music catalog.
Oh, Shar music, okay.
And I ordered my fiddle. It was $613. I saved up the money. And I ordered it from the catalog and just started bringing it out to the fiddle practices and picking up the tunes by ear. And the fiddle made sense to me, having learned piano, and just kind of, I never took formal lessons, but I often accompanied Suzuki classes. So I played piano and I saw someone else teach other people violin, so that helped me a lot. And I kind of learned through osmosis like that. And we also had a lot of professional folk musicians coming through Smithers that would give workshops to the entire fiddle group. And I learned a lot from them. So they would teach melodies and make arrangements for the group, and everything was taught by ear. And in particular, this one guy kept coming back a lot to Smithers. His name was Oliver Schroer, and maybe you've heard of him? Yeah. So over the years, he came back frequently, and he was a real mentor to me, and we did a lot of one-on-one work as well, but it wasn't like lessons. It was more like he'd come to my house and we would improvise together, or he would teach me one of his tunes, and then I would sit down and accompany him on the piano. And that was, really neat learning experience for me to have that kind of close connection to an amazing musician like that, yeah.
Who's obviously not forgotten by folks here either. Now I'm just wondering, we don't have so much time, and again, that's all my fault, I'm so sorry. But Emilyn, I'm wondering if is your fiddle out here?
I forget where I put it. Green room. Oh, would you mind?
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Thanks,
Because
Leah.
Emilyn's fiddle is, what would you say, custom made?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it would be good to have a little inside track on, so you'll get a look at it. And in a way, even the look of Emilyn's fiddle, I find it doesn't look like a modern fiddle, and that even fits in our project even more. Here's our other wonderful guest artist, Leah Kirstein.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leah. Do you want me to hold the mic for you, or?
Am I going to play it?
I don't know. Who made this fiddle, and what is it about it that you wanted? Why not just a regular violin?
As I mentioned, I studied learned a lot with Oliver Schroer, and he played a 5-string violin. And so at one point he gave me his first 5-string violin, and that was when I was 19 or 18, and so it was kind of my first real fiddle. It was after my first fiddle was that $600 one from Char magazine, and then he gave me a 5-string fiddle, and I just fell in love with having the extra string. So it's a low C string, so it covers the range of a viola and a violin all in one. And I feel like since I'm a piano player first, I often think in harmony and accompaniment, and having that extra low end allows me to sort of also accompany other melodic instruments and play more like double stops and things in a lower range that don't get in the way of other instruments. And yeah, so I just fell in love with the 5-string sound. And then eventually the fiddle he had given me it wasn't that good, actually. That's why he didn't want it either. And I got this one, which is made by Bradley Higgins. He's a maker in the States. And yeah, it's very much not a conventional fiddle. I was on tour in Germany once, and I needed some small repairs done. And I took it to a maker in Germany, and he was appalled by this fiddle. But I like the sound, I like how it plays, and it's weird. It's a weird instrument, but it works for me.
I think you'll like how it plays as well. Oh, I've lost the plot here. Could you give a tiny little sample of what it sounds like and what all the 5 strings are? Or?
Sure. Well, see if it's in tune.
So you get the extra, get the extra low notes down there, and so delicious. And in the very short time we have left, then Emilyn, so we haven't explored the French connection yet, but I want to call her an expert, but I understand why you don't want to say that. But you've been playing a lot of music she's been playing a lot of music from the south of France lately, and so how did that come into your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my favorite region in France is actually more in the middle. Auvergne and Limousin are kind of more central, and that's a place that, I love the music from there. And the south as well, Gascony is some great music from there. I lived in the Netherlands for a while, studying classical piano, actually, and I ended up meeting some musicians who were busking on the street, and they connected me with the local folk scene. And it was there that I first heard some tunes from France, and they just right away kind of grabbed me. I don't know, there's some earthy quality to them that the traditional music that I'd heard in Canada didn't quite have the same kind of feeling to it. I guess here we hear a lot of Celtic music, and even the music in Quebec, which I love as well, is my favorite traditional music in Canada. The tunes have more of a Scottish influence rather than a French influence. So yeah, anyways, hearing these tunes from France was amazing. We ended up starting a group when I lived in the Netherlands that plays for dancing, for bal folk. And with that group, I traveled around France and went to a number of festivals, and the festivals there are really participatory. So everyone who goes to these festivals either joins in by dancing or joins in by jamming, and it was just a really great way, or it still is a great way for me to learn and to be immersed in those traditions. And yeah, I was maybe going to say this later on as well, but the more I learn, the more I realize there's more to learn, and the more I zero in on like a particular region, I start to realize within that region, even each village has its differences, and I can't even really say French music is this, or French traditional music is this, because for instance, the music from Brittany, from Bretagne, to me sounds worlds apart from the music of Auvergne and stuff, and they're just maybe a few hundred kilometers away. But yeah, as you get into these styles, you realize all these differences in ornamentation and in feel, and yeah, it's pretty extensive and pretty neat.
And of course, part of that difference comes from the dance, the styles of dance, the steps that people are doing. We're going to get some little samples of that tonight, because, and I will say this to everybody at the top of the show, but we know so much early music that we do. We actually know that it wasn't just music for concerts. Of course, this is the best way we can bring this to people nowadays, is to have it in a bigger hall and so on. But so much of early music has specific functions, including dancing or liturgical music, and we're always sort of out of the context. And so part of my hope in tonight's project was that, again, we would get some more of that cultural information. And as soon as you see Emilyn's feet moving, you get a better idea of how the music should feel. And we just can never get that from a 500-year-old piece of paper. And then how long have you been dancing these dances? You learned the tunes and the dancing simultaneously, or?
I think it was almost 9 years ago that I lived in the Netherlands. So that would be the first time I heard this kind of music. And then, yeah, more the past 6 years, more intensively been learning this stuff. And yeah, I would say I've been learning the dance and the music kind of at the same time, and in particular the music of Auvergne, where the bourrée is popular. When I first heard it, I loved it right away, and I wanted to do it, but it's kind of an intimidating dance, and also slightly intimidating musically. And I found I couldn't learn one thing without learning the other. I had to learn the music and the dance at the same time in order to understand both sides. It wasn't until I spent 5 days in a row dancing bourrée and hearing people play it, and also playing it myself, that it kind of gelled. And it was like, also now, if I play bourrée, my feet have to move. It's just part of playing these tunes. It's, yeah, you can't really separate them for me. And in order to learn one side, I had to learn the other. And it's like the chicken or the egg. I don't know which one came first for that, but yeah.
Most definitely. By the way, depending on where you're seated, I highly recommend, of course, we'll be listening to Emilyn. She's going to play some fantastic solo pieces, but I recommend taking a look at her feet while she's playing. It's quite magical. I think I've gotten the signal that we just have time, if there might be a couple of questions out there that we could endeavor to answer. We've answered all your questions. You'll have all the questions after the show. Yeah.
So are these dances sort of ordinary people dances, or these are not like court dances, or these are sort of people at maybe harvest festivals, or?
I'll just repeat the question. She's asking who's dancing these dances that we've been talking about, what parts of society and so on.
I can't speak to the historical, whoever danced them historically, but in modern day today, it's just regular people dancing them. So it's just like here in Canada, people might go out square dancing or something, or people might go out contra dancing, or swing dancing, any of these kind of sort of cultural dances that are social, they're not performative, they're meant for people to have a good time together. Yeah, so they're great at weddings, great at celebrations, and in France and across Europe, people hold either weekly events or monthly events, and anyone's welcome to join in. So, yeah.
I understand tonight we're going to be hearing the quarterly music of, if I'm pronouncing this correctly,
Claude
as
Lejeune.
well as and his contemporaries, and the music of Voix de Vie. I was just wondering if you could speak on the difference between those two styles of music.
The question is about some of the old stuff on the program. We've got featured a little bit a courtly composer named Claude Lejeune, who was working for Henri IV, and I think, who's the monarch right after Henri IV? And he was writing for the elite at the court, and there were a lot of fantastic poets at court writing very elevated poetry, trying to imitate the ancient Greek poetry. And so they would write their French poetry, it's very artificial, in long and short syllables, so you get these wacky rhythms in the music. And so that was all, you can't dance to that music, that's definitely not sort of by the people. And then the Voix de Vie is a little bit more on the popular side, and we've got quite a few of those songs, especially in the second half of the show. And Voix de Vie, these were publications in Paris, starting I think in the 1560s. Various people would publish just songs people were enjoying singing. They can be love poetry, they can be, this is our song, we're from the Printmakers Guild, and this is our song. They're about all kinds of things, some of them not very politically correct, I'm sure. And then there was a further step to the 18th and 19th century called colportage. So people were peddling printed music. They were carrying on that Voix de Ville tradition. And these peddlers, they would be selling mirrors and all kinds of things, but little books of songs. And thanks to this colportage in those centuries in between the old stuff and now, we get so many wonderful melodies and songs that we're going to hear. And I believe that we must finish now. But thank you so much. Don't forget to, you can pre-order your intermission snacks right now, and there's a beautiful CD table out there. And thank you so much for coming. I'm just thrilled we can have Emilyn and Leah and our band here all on the stage. It's just been an absolutely wonderful rehearsal time, and we don't want it to end. And I really hope you enjoy just every minute of the show. Thank you so much.